Good morning, 4-2. This is what we are going to learn today. Firstly, we will do a recap on fraction as part of a set, followed by more about interpreting fraction as part of a set. Let's look at this question as a recap. So, what fraction of the marbles are blue? So, first thing, you would have went on to count the total number of blue marbles, which is 1, 2. And I know that in total, I have 5 marbles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, 2 out of 5 of the marbles are blue, which means 2/5 of the marbles are blue. So, actually simply based on the question, you would have been able to tell me what the denominator is. So, the key word in the question is actually the word of. So, what do I mean by that? In order to determine what your denominator is, you simply just have to look at the variable that appears right after the word of. So, after the word of, the variable appearing is actually the marbles, which is actually your total number of marbles, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hence, your denominator here will have to be 5. So, after the word of, the very next variable here simply hints you and tell you what your denominator is. What do I mean by that? So, if I were to add in one more blue marble and ask you what fraction of the marbles are blue. So, the marbles appears right after the word of, which hints me that the total marbles here will have to be my denominator. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I know that now I have a total of 6 marbles, which means 6 is going to be my denominator. And since I want to know what number of marbles are blue, I just move on to count the number of blue marbles. 1, 2, 3. So I know that 3 out of 6 of the marbles are blue. Can I further simplify 3 out of 6? Yes, I can further group them into groups of 3. So I just need to divide both the numerator and the denominator by 3, which will give me 1 out of 2, which means half of the marbles are blue. So, hopefully from this recap example, it helps you to be able to decide what your denominator is. Simply look at the variable that appears after the word of to decide what your base is. So in this case, since the variable after the word of is the total marbles here, I just have to count the total marbles I have and indicate it in my denominator as shown here. Now, let's take a look at what I've just written here. 3 out of 4 of 12. Looking at this phrase that I wrote here, can you pause and think? What does 3 represents? What does 4 in the denominator means to you? And what about 12 here? You can pause the video for 10 seconds and think about this. Hopefully you spend some time thinking about this. So, the 12 here actually represents a set of 12 items. And the denominator of 4 actually means you have 4 equal groups. And we all know that 3/4 can be understood as 3 out of 4, which means out of these 4 equal groups, I only want 3 required groups. So 3 out of 4 of 12 simply means I have a set containing of 12 items, and I'm going to divide them equally into 4 groups, but I'm only going to find the value of 3 equal groups. I will be illustrating this with an example below. Let's take a look at this question. How many marbles are there in 1/3 of a set? So in this case, what do you think a set actually represents? As mentioned previously, a set represents the total number of items here. In this case, my total items is actually my marbles. So how many marbles do I have in all? I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So in this set, I know I am going to have 12 marbles. So 1/3 of 12 marbles, what does it mean to you? 1/3 meaning I'm going to distribute my marbles into groups of 3, and I'm only requiring 1 group. What do I mean by that? So if I have 12 marbles here, I'm going to divide them into groups of 3 because 3 is my denominator, which means one group will look like this. Second group, and my third group, which gives me 1, 2, 3 groups. Okay, since my denominator is 3, I know that I'm going to divide them into 3 groups, and it has to be 3 equal groups. So that's why in every group, I will have 4 marbles. So 1 out of 3 meaning I have 3 groups, I only want 1. So in one group, how many marbles do you have? You have 1, 2, 3, 4, which means 1/3 of a set will actually give you 4 marbles. So if I were to present this in a model, I know that 1/3 of 12 marbles simply means I'm just going to draw a long bar that looks like this. And I'm going to label it 12. And since I am only interested in 1/3 of it, I know that, which means that I need to cut my bar into 3 equal groups. So 1, 2, 3 equal groups. And I only am interested in one group, so this is what I want to find. So since I know that 3 equal groups gives me 12, to find one group, I simply take 12 divided by 3 to give me 4, which is what I've gotten here. So let's move on to part B. How many marbles are there in 2/3 of a set? Now, I know that my set here refers to my 12 marbles. And what does 2/3 means? 2/3 means I'm going to divide my 12 marbles into groups of 3, and I want to find out how many marbles are there in 2 groups. So this means that I am still going to cut my model into 3 equal parts. which means this whole bar will represent 12. And I'm going to cut it into 1 part, 2 part, 3 parts. And in this case, I'm not just interested in 1 unit, but I am interested in 2 units. So how do I find 2 units? Given 3 units, I can always find 1 unit first, which is 12 divided by 3 gives me 4. So I know that 1 unit represents 4. To find 2 units, I simply take 2 times 4 to give me 8, which means 2/3 of a set is actually 8 marbles. Now, let's look at another question. How do I find 4/5 of 20? What does 4/5 of 20 means? Meaning, I have 20 items in a set, which means I have a set of 20. Okay? And I'm going to divide into 5 equal parts. But I'm only interested and required to find 4 groups. So, I'm going to first draw a bar to represent my set of 20. So this whole bar will represent 20. So, am I going to cut this bar into groups into 4 or 5? Okay, always cut your model based on your denominator. Okay, because denominator indicates and tell you how many equal parts are there. So, since my denominator is 5, I'm going to cut my model into 5 parts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and I only required 4 groups, which means I want to find the value of my numerator now, which is 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is what I want to find. Since I know that 5 units here gives me 20, I can already go ahead to find what does 1 unit represents. If 5 unit is 20, I know that 1 unit is just 20 divided by 5, which will give me 4. So since I know that 1 unit is 4, 4/5 of 20 means I want to find 4 units. So I move on to go and find 4 units, which is 4 times 5. Which is 4 times 4 to give you 16. Which means 4/5 of 20 is actually 16. Now, if you have bought your textbook back home, these questions are found in textbook page 110. Can you please pause the video now and try out these 4 questions? Now, let's look at part A together. 5 out of 9 of 18. So, how did you draw your model? Firstly, you will have drawn a long bar here to represent 18. And since my denominator is 9 here, you should have cut your model into 9 equal parts. Nine as your denominator, so cut your model into 9 parts. And since I only want 5 out of 9, which means I only want to find 5 units, this would be where my question mark is. Because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, I know that 9 units give me 18. I can move on to find 1 unit, which gives me 2. So since I am only interested in 5 out of 9, which is 5 units here, I can find 5 units, which is actually 10. So the answer for part A is 10. I'm not going to go through B, C, and D, but please check your answers accordingly. For part B, your answer is 12. For part C, your answer is 7. And for part D, your answer is 16. Part D was actually went through with you just now. So if you still cannot do it, please reverse and backtrack your video to look at how I explained previously. So now, as a closure, hopefully you are able to understand what does a fraction of a set means and how should you draw your model. Remember, how many parts to cut your model depends on what your denominator is. If your denominator is 9, you will cut your model into 9 parts. If your denominator is 7, you will cut your model into 7 parts. If your denominator is 4, you cut your models into 4 parts. So, after watching this video, please go back to my individual timetable to take a look at what you are supposed to do today. And please look out for Showbie for the answers after you have completed your work. Thank you.